If you can make sure to call in to the phone number, as in order to speak on that project, you have to call in to the conference line.
Yeah, I'm here on the conference line.
Sorry, I should turn my mic on so you can hear me. So, sorry. Good evening. We're going to call this meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission on Monday, March 22nd to order at 6 p.m. We're going to have the invocation by Commissioner, I'm going to get it right this time, Irving, and the Pledge of Allegiance by Commissioner Yoakum. Please stand. I know. Amen. Republic for which it stands, under God, indivisible, justice for all. Thank you. Roll call, please.
Commissioner LaFalle? Commissioner Yoakum?
Here.
Vice Chair Sharp?
Here.
Chair Huggins?
Here.
Commissioner Irving?
Here.
Commissioner Frank?
Here.
Commissioner Babb?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Awesome. Great. Thank you. All right, 3.0, call to the public. The call to the public is intended for speaking on topics not listed later on the agenda. If your comment or concern is regarding an item later in the agenda, please wait until the commission opens that agenda for public comment. The commission requests that you fill out a speaker card to make proper record of your comment. Anyone wishing to address the commission on anything else, please approach the podium. While seeing none, we'll move on. All right, 4.0, approval of the February 8th Planning and Zoning Committee meeting minutes.
So moved.
Awesome, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion passes. All right, guys, we're going to go ahead, Commissioner Babb, we're also, for your information, we're going to move 5.1 and 5.2 to the end of the agenda. And we're going to start with 5.3. That's going to be the developmental review process, DRP 20-10 amendment, a request by Callaway Architects on behalf of EHC Maricopa LP, requesting review and approval of the amendment to the approved elevation plan for the exceptional health care from 35 feet high to 40 feet high. The project is located on the northwest corner of Honeycutt Avenue and John Wayne Parkway, property address 19060 North John Wayne Parkway. Discussion and action. Rudy, take it away.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, as mentioned, this item is for an amendment to the approved elevation for exceptional health care, a height increase from 35 feet high to 40 feet high. Here's the site facts, which can also be found within your staff report on the first page. The site is located at the southwest corner of John Wayne Parkway and Honeycutt Avenue. And here's a site plan that reflects some minor changes since the last time this was presented to the commission last year, late last year in the fall. The parking on the rear was relocated on the western side, and the second axis was moved further north along Maricopa Road to avoid conflict with the intersection at Maricopa Road and Honeycutt Avenue. But the request for tonight is actually the height increase from the actual originally approved elevations shown here. And in the next slide, you'll notice the amendment request itself, as I'm going to flip-flop between this slide and the next slide. So notice what's being revised or changed. It's a 5-foot height increase, and we're talking about that architectural tower element on the top elevations, that right portion that's been increased from 35 feet high to 40 feet high at the maximum top of structure itself. Per the applicant, the request is being made to set itself apart from the rest of the building itself, and to somewhat not be overshadowed with the John Wayne Parkway overpass immediately to the east. In accordance to zoning code, I'm going to flip this real quick. As required per the zoning code, one sign posting was posted on the property by city staff. Notifications letters were sent out to all property owners within the new required 600 feet distance of the subject site. And at the time of writing this report, no comments have been received from the public. In accordance to the zoning code, the decision-making body, the Planning and Zoning Commission, shall evaluate the proposed development conformity with the following design guidelines criteria: that the overall design of the project, this height increase is within the allowable height of the zoning district, so that does comply. It is suitable environment for occupants, visitors, and the general community itself. Colors, materials, and landscaping are internally consistent, fully integrated with one another, and is compatible with the neighboring development. Again, notice was posted and no comments were submitted from the public. And lastly, the visually interesting environment. The height increase itself continues to complement the architectural design of the building as well. Staff finds the submittal items of DRP 20-10 amendment to the originally approved DRP be substantially compliant with zoning code section 18.155, 0770 and 060. Staff recommends approval of DRP 20-10 amendment, subject to the conditions stated in the staff report. Madam Chair, Commissioners, I'm here to answer any questions, and I believe the applicant's not here, so it's just myself, so. Madam Chair, Commissioners.
Okay, since we do have somebody on Zoom, we're going to go ahead and go to them first. Commissioner Babb, you have any questions?
No, I don't, Madam Chair.
No questions.
Commissioner Sharp?
Questions?
Commissioner Yocum?
No questions.
Ms. Rachel? No questions. All right, no, I don't have any either. So with that being said, is there a motion?
So moved. Seconded.
All right, we do have a motion and a second. Any other comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved.
Thank you.
All right. 5.4, developmental development review permit, DRP 21-01, a request by Z Modular requesting review and approval of site plan, landscape, photometric, and elevation plans for proposed 348-unit multi-story, multifamily development generally located on the southeast corner of State Route 238 and Loma Road. Discussion and action. You have a speaker card for this one, so we will hold that off until after the presentation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So as part of the entitlement process, just as a general reminder to the Commissioner and our audience here, this is a three-step process. The first step being the rezoning, which was previously approved at our last meeting. We are now on step 2, which is the development review permit, which will be then followed by the third and last step, which is the building permit and construction documents. Just some information on the site, about 14 acres big, currently sitting vacant with a general plan designation of mixed use and a zoning of planned area development, PAD. So this is the subject site. As you can see, it sits about 550 feet west of Acacia Crossings, property line to property line. And I'll also have another slide in my presentation here in just a bit, giving you and our audience today a better idea of how far away this really is from the Acacia Crossing subdivision and how much it will visually impact them. But for now, this is a good representation of that. Here's the overall site plan. On the west side, on the left side of the screen, is Loma Road, which will serve as one of the two main access points of the site. To the east, on the right side of the screen, is West Maricopa Village Road, I believe is what it will be called. It will be a private drive, which will also serve as a main access point to the development. And that connects to the north to State Route 238, sorry. Here's the northern half of the development. At the very top of the screen, you can see a private drive that lines the northern half of the development. This is going to be developed to have a sort of Main Street type of feel with shops and offices along the bottom floor and residential along the top floor. The northern portion of this quote-unquote Main Street will come to the Planning and Zoning Commission at a later date, but this is the first step towards that. This northern portion of the development also has the clubhouse, the pool, and a secondary emergency-only access to the west. Okay. Here's the bottom half of the subject site. Along the top, you can see the two main entrance points, which have dedicated guest parking, and it will be built to have a sort of on-street type of feel for the guest parking, although it will be gated, so fully gated. Here's the landscape plan. The landscaping for this development does comply with the previously approved PAD. In this landscape plan, you can also see the emergency access on the west side for both the bottom and the top half of the parcels, as well as some of the amenities for the development. Those amenities include a dedicated dog park for this community, as well as a pool, clubhouse, and sitting areas. On the bottom half of the parcel, they'll also have a an open recreation area with fire pits and a splash pad just for this development alone. Here we can see a couple elevations of the entire site. The top elevation is an interior view, as you would see it kind of from the parking lot. And the exterior or the bottom elevation is a view of what you might see as you drive along Loma Road. Here's a couple elevations of the buildings that don't front Loma Road. This is elevations of the clubhouse. As you can see, materials and colors all match the rest of the residential development. The transportation analysis determined that the proposed roadway infrastructure would provide the development with acceptable levels of service at both signalized and unsignalized intersections during both AM and PM peak hours. Also, our city engineer is here today in case you have any specific questions regarding the traffic. But I do want to remind the commission and all of our audience today that we are working closely with ADOT on all traffic concerns regarding State Route 238. So this is that line of sight exhibit that I was talking about earlier. This kind of hopefully gives everyone a better idea of truly how far away this development is from Acacia Crossings. Between the buildings, from building to building, it'll be roughly 659 feet. And the line of sight shown on this illustration comes from the very top of the building. So actually the line of sight that someone would have from the third story would be even shallower than what's pictured here. This should hopefully address a lot of the privacy concerns that the residents of Acacia Crossings have expressed to us, and also a lot of the concerns that they might have regarding any sort of view of the mountains out to the west that they previously would have had. This is the criteria that the Planning and Zoning Commission must use to review this project. They should take into consideration the overall site design. They should consider if the development is providing a sustainable environment, if the colors, materials, and landscape is internally consistent, if the development is compatible with neighborhood or neighboring developments, and if this development is visually interesting. As part of our public outreach, we did post a sign on the subject property, as well as notified all property owners within 600 feet of this development. Staff did receive some public input via email and phone. All of those email concerns should have been addressed, and you were given a copy of those conversations in your staff report. Staff finds the submittal items for DRP 2101 to be substantially compliant with the zoning code, and staff recommends the approval of DRP 2101 subject to the conditions set in the staff report.
Well, we do have a public speaker card, so let's go ahead and hear from, it just says Getter. On up, approach the podium, state your name and your address for the records, please.
David Getter. My address is 20705 North Carmen Avenue, Maricopa, Wisconsin, or Arizona, 85139. My question was, were any studies done on the impact of property values with this type of development going into the residential areas like it is?
Thank you. So that is not one of the criteria that the Planning and Zoning Commission can use to determine whether this will get approved or not. And it is not something that the Planning and Zoning Department reviews internally either. Yeah. No.
And Madam Chair, Commissioners, for the public, again, as Peter stated, it's not a code requirement of the city to review property value evaluations part of it. Fortunately, that's not a criteria of approval.
Or denial. Or denial either. Was that all you had? All right, since that's the last speaker card, I guess I'm going to throw it out to the commissioners. Any questions? We're going to go back out to Commissioner Babb.
Yes, thank you. My question's around the traffic impact study that was done. I know that it's saying that their roads are going to be serviceable during AM and PM peak hours, but do we know how much of an increase of traffic flow, how many cars during those hours will it add, and what service will that take our roads from? Are they currently a B or C, and will it go down to a D and F? What's the impact of that traffic in that area?
I'll turn it over to our city engineer, Eduardo Rodales.
Good evening. The level of service right now is D, which is acceptable by our city standards. We do know that it's going to increase a lot of traffic on the intersection of 238 and Smith and Key and John Way Parkway. Therefore, the city is already planning on increasing the capacity of that intersection so that we don't have more problems that we already have as right now. That project is going to be probably in the next 12 months. Any other question?
Can you repeat the service level of the roads again? Because you were breaking up over the phone.
D.S. and David.
The current condition is D.
The current condition is D, and okay.
No,
wow.
D is going to be the condition after the opening date.
D will be the condition after this building goes in. What is the current condition?
I don't have it on the top of my head right now, but it's not as bad as we think that it is right now. I can send you an email with the actual information so you can review it.
Okay. I am, Chair, Commissioners, I am just concerned about that 238 road and also the intersection there at John Wayne Parkway as well, with how bogged down it gets already during the day when you're trying to get out, especially with garbage trucks and other trucks coming through the city right there, turning on and going northbound on John Way. It does get extremely crowded. So that is something we have to consider as well.
Right, and the city is considering that, and as I said, we're already preparing plans to increase the capacity of the intersection.
And then, Madam Chair, Commissioners,
Okay.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Babb, Rudy Lopez, Deputy Director, just keep in mind that as part of this project, and what's illustrated in the staff report is that the project and the previous PAD that you guys looked at, there is improvements that's going to be required as part of this development. Improvements to both Loma Road for expanding that roadway, improvements to State Route 238 along the frontage of that, and also there's additional improvements being made to further enhance, as Eduardo said, continue to improve the roadway conditions beyond the frontage of this subject site as well. So just keep that in mind that the applicant developer is making the required improvements to, obviously it's not going to resolve the entire corridor of State Route 238, but it's going to continue to somewhat mitigate or just address how traffic is going to be coming in and out of this development efficiently, safely, and for the better, for the welfare of the city.
Okay, and I did hear correctly that there's mitigation efforts at that intersection in the next 12 months about?
That is correct.
Okay.
Let me throw another
That's
question.
the
out there.
question. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, let me throw another question out there to help expand on that. Rudy, if I'm not mistaken, when we were getting the initial presentation on the traffic, wasn't there a information presented that there was going to be a traffic light put there?
Madam Chair, Commissioners, that's correct. So right now, the project is not warranted with this development at this time, but as more development occurs on the western side and the southern side, as more uses are developed, a traffic signal will be warranted at the intersection of Loma Road and State Route 238. And the developer, and we're working with the developer, and the developer has agreed to at least participate in that traffic funding for that intersection. Just initially, right off the bat, this development will not consider the need. Correct me if I'm wrong, Eduardo.
That is correct. This development will not trigger and
Yeah,
will
it's not going to
warrant
push it up high enough
Right.
yet.
No, but the developments that are going to occur around the area will do it.
Right, so this project, this phase of the project doesn't warrant the additional assistance. It's going to be an ongoing work in progress as we go through there. So by the time we get this project completely, or they get this project completely finished, then the mitigation between what the city's looking to do and what the developer's looking to do with the improvements should increase that current D level up where we want it to be better, correct?
And then, Madam Chair, Commissioner, also, the developer's also participating in the funding for that traffic signal
Correct.
in the future.
Correct. But at this point, this part of it doesn't warrant any additional things other than the city's stepping in right now to look at what John Wayne Parkway and Smith Inc. intersection looks like.
Right, they're going to do improvements around the area of the streets around their property, but we're not going to have a traffic signal at this point at 238 and Loma Road until we get more developments on board, and then the traffic signal is going to be warranted.
Correct. I just wanted to put it out there that that is something that was talked about for down the line to help hopefully answer Commissioner Babb's questions and concerns. I hope that helped. Commissioner Babb?
That does. Yeah, absolutely. That my questions are answered around the traffic item. I do have additional though.
Okay, go ahead.
My additional question is around the building materials and the designs of the buildings. The buildings do look extremely industrial to me. And have we worked with this developer yet to kind of liven this building up and make it not look as industrial as it is?
Commissioner, yes, absolutely. In fact, the developer has been extremely cooperative with us and very receptive to our initial round of comments. If you were to look back to back at their first submittal and to what I presented to you today, I think you would agree that substantial change has been made and substantial improvements have been added. So.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Babb, also just to add on to what Peter mentioned, just keep in mind, if Peter, if you could just scroll back to the elevations. Just keep in mind what you're looking at is you're not seeing the full elements in the real world. You're not seeing the trees, the fencing materials out there. As Peter mentioned, we did work diligently with the applicant to remove the notion of the box-like structures. We had them enhance the massing, push and pull elements of the spaces to kind of create visually interesting shadows in the area. We definitely accentuated the corner portions of what Peter mentioned in his presentation, that Loma Road will have that nice enhanced look out there. From staff's perspective, we feel that we worked diligently and tirelessly with the applicant to modify these elevations, and I believe the applicant's on the line as well. Elena, are you on the phone?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Yeah, and correct me if I'm wrong. You can speak on this if you want to mention anything else regarding architectural. But again, as I mentioned, commissioners, that we have worked diligently, which we feel is somewhat going to provide some nice architecture, interesting look to the area, and to continue to set that tone and trend for other developments in that area. Elena, did you want to add anything else to that?
Yes, please. Our team worked extensively with the city to go over the elevation materials and actual facade push and pull, as they mentioned. We worked also with the adjacent Innovation Villas project to have similar looking materials, so it feels like a much larger community of the overall West Maricopa development. So that was definitely something that we've coordinated not only with the city but also with the adjacent team. We also added some shading above the third floor and changed some of the materials to be a little bit more vibrant. You could see with the wood tones and then the blues inside. And these are definitely just pictures, obviously, or excuse me, colored elevations. When you see it in real life, you'll really see the vibrancy of those materials.
Okay, thank you. Rudy, these designs do meet, of course, our guidelines and city code, correct?
I mean, Commissioner, Madam Chair, Commissioner Bapp. So when it comes to architectural, this area is not within the actual district itself. We're really going on what we think is best for the city. More recently, I think what we're trying to get away is the use of just desert tone colors, anything that provides some variety of architectural look and feel. I think we're trying to push these applicants to create an identity and look that's going to be architecturally interesting. When we saw the first elements or first draft of this, it was definitely an industrial look. And like I mentioned, we worked diligently to kind of move the boxy look of it to kind of create some massing and offsets here and there. But at the same token, when the applicant presented to us the brown, the light brown goldish yellow color into it as somewhat of an accent color, we felt that definitely creates that pop in there to it still has a more grayish look, but at the same token has some unique architectural color scheme to enhance the area. So in general speaking, we feel that this will definitely continue to strive for visually interesting architecture within the area and again, set that level architectural for the rest of the area in the future.
Okay, thank you, Rudy.
Any other questions, Commissioner Babb?
No, Madam Chair, I'm done. Thank you.
No problem. All right, we'll start on this side. Ms. Rachel, anything?
As far as the,
I was going to go down the line, sorry.
Thank you.
Like I always do, yeah.
My first question is in reference to the clubhouse. That looks to be a single story, and I was just questioning why it's not a multi-story building consistent with the rest of the buildings, especially when there was a mention of there being the storefronts. So how, in conjunction with that architecture, did that end up being a single story?
I think I'll let
My first question.
the applicant answer your question, Commissioner.
Yes, thank you. So our clubhouse design is actually a prototypical design that we have on numerous other projects, including our project in Phoenix and in Midland, Texas, and San Marcos, Texas, and soon in Austin. So we have essentially a standard that we've already developed internally, and we've worked extensively with our team and external architects and external engineers to create this prototype with the intention of being able to reuse it. It is essentially a single story because the program that we've established with the property management company really just requires a single story. Once you add a second story, you start having ADA concerns, so Americans with Disability Act, and you have to have an elevator and possibly ramps and make everything accessible. So to alleviate that, we really just made the program a single story because everything could fit really within the footprint that we desired for all of our sites. So again, we worked extensively with our Greystar property management company that has worked on hundreds of apartment complexes throughout the southern United States, actually throughout the entire United States. And they know exactly what programs required, how often things are being used, how to size rooms accordingly, such as the fitness center, the entertainment room, the golf simulator. They know how to properly request certain amenities, and therefore we sized the building accordingly, and in doing so, we were just able to get it as a single story. And we did actually elevate the parapet quite substantially to make it look taller, to give it a more substantial look. As you can see there, the very front entrance, it has 3 levels essentially of the facade elevation, and that's in an effort to make it seem quite grand and a nice clean entry, while keeping with the same materials as the apartment buildings themselves, but just kind of a mix. Our use of stucco on the clubhouse is greater than our use of stucco on the apartment buildings. But really, we were just able to get everything in, and we did allow for a lot of storefronts in the rear facade, which is actually our southern facade, so we'll get a lot of that southern light exposure. And that really elevates the look of the building without having to go up to a second story.
Okay, thank you for that response. And just for clarification, for the multiple stories, I thought maybe more residential above it, but thank you for that. My next question is on the rendition for the actual units. I noticed that there are balconies on the second and third levels, but will there be enclosed patios for the residents who are on the first floor levels, which provides the privacy and possible, personal usage for the first floor residents?
Again, I think I'll turn it
Yeah.
over to Elena. Oh,
Sorry about that. Yes. So each, it's difficult to tell with this elevation. Again, this is made from a 3D modeling program, so it doesn't have every single element that you would see in real life, but we do have patios for every single unit on the first floor, and then the second and third floor obviously receive balconies. The balconies and the patios are the same size, and the patios themselves will be within the privacy fence that we have, or not privacy fence, security fence that we have going around the site. So it will be a semi-private patio, just like the balconies. Obviously, when you're up on the third floor, people can see you from far away, but you can kind of protect yourself a little more being behind a fence and putting a plant out on your patio. But yes, each unit on the first floor does have a patio.
Thank you. And then my next question, it's relating to the parking. And it's my understanding that there are 1.5 parking spaces per unit. Is that correct?
that's correct, yes.
And then the total units is at 348?
So
Okay,
there's
perfect.
a total number of 348 units and a total of 522 parking stalls provided.
Okay, so for the parking, based on this 1.5 stalls per unit, I know that staff has done their research, just want clarification. Those 1.5 stalls per unit will not create an overflow onto the street, and if there is overflow, where would that overflow be, and how would it impact the main street? Because we're already looking at a traffic impact going down to a condition of D. So how would that then impact, even with the street widening, if people are parking on the street?
Sure.
Overall
So
community.
I think when you look at these two numbers together, the total number of units and the total number of parking stalls provided, it was clear to staff and to the applicant that this is plenty of parking. But to answer your question, there wouldn't be anywhere for anyone to park off-site. That would be breaking the law, and it could be cited and ticketed. So we don't anticipate that happening at all, especially considering there is dedicated guest parking as well as parking for the residents.
Perfect. Thank you.
Madam Chair and Commissioner LaFalle, the only thing I could add to that as well is that our zoning code, as Peter mentioned, there's penalties to it. If for some odd reasons this development is in clear violation of having some off-site parking because of not having enough parking on site. This site's required to mandate all the parking on their property. If it is found that they're not having substantial amount of parking, it'll be the property owner's responsibility to then address that concern. And then we have the mechanism process to have conformity to the required codes and development approval of this plan itself. So there's mechanisms to address that in the future as well.
Okay, and then confirming that the multi-level units are what we're looking at tonight, not the single level.
That's correct.
Thank you.
That's it? Awesome. Commissioner Yocum.
I share the concern about parking. I know in the workup that we have here, they stated that the overflow would go into other areas that are being used for other purposes, and I'm just wondering, depending on what the usage is and the time of the usage and how much parking volume would be required by that other usage, would there be adequate parking if there's overflow in the residential area? That's my concern, too. Also, I looked at item number 9. This is in the staff report conclusions about truck traffic, deliveries, refuse, and so forth, and the noise therein is going to be subject or limited to the hours of operation. And I'd just like to know how we would, are we going to define the hours of operation? If hours of operation for one of the entities here is, let's say, 3 o'clock a.m. till 7 o'clock a.m., is this going to have any meaning? I'm just asking the question because we don't know what the normal hours of operation are going to be.
Sure.
Also, kudos to the designers in one respect, looking at the illustrations we have, and it's the curved nature of the corners of the project as they're illustrated on illustrations number A111, A111B, and A111C. I really like that design. I think it does break things up, and it does detract from what was referred to as the industrial look. I really do like that feature. As far as traffic, I too am concerned about the traffic, but I think that was pretty well addressed by Rudy Lopez in that depending on the traffic, a light might come, it might not, depending on what kind of volume we see from this project as well as others that would integrate with it. Parking, we talked about parking, but I am really concerned about the parking. I think that's it. Thank you.
Okay. So let me try and address the parking question first. In the event that we do have, for whatever reason, more than 522 cars in this development at one time, Elena, feel free to step in, but I think the Main Street private drive could be used as overflow. Although to have more than 522 cars in a development with 348 units, that would be something, I think.
It'd be a lot of cars.
Well, some of those units are 3-bedroom, and when you have 3-bedroom, you could have 2-3 cars or more in that particular unit. Now, granted, there are not as many 3-bedroom units as there are the others, but when you and I really don't know what the formula is or could be to try to quantify that.
Sure.
But it is of concern to me.
Sure. Thank you, Commissioner. Elena, feel free to step in here, but if it is my understanding that most units are actually a 1-bedroom, and the least amount of units they have is a 3-bedroom. So by that measure, most units are providing half a space extra than they will need. So hopefully that measure helps alleviate your concerns, Commissioner Yocum.
Yes, and if I may, we also discussed this with our property management company, again, who pretty much gives their blessing for the number of parking spaces and the parking ratio that we design. And so we walked through this with them. We talked to them about that. They didn't have any concerns, especially since there's going to be a bus stop nearby, just within steps of this development. So given our property management company, who works with these issues all the time with parking, they didn't see an issue with this particular project. that seemed to be an okay solution for us. And the reason why our site is designed that way, I'll say one more thing, is also we have numerous projects that have similar parking ratios, especially our Phoenix project, I think is actually a 1.3 to 1, or 1.4 to 1. It's actually a little bit less. So similar kind of concept, but the design for the site, we really wanted to provide some amenities to the residents, and we didn't want to have just a sea of parking. So we do have, as you can see in the site plan, some landscaped areas near the clubhouse and the pool that provide just kind of a concrete relief to have the green spaces and yards and hammock gardens. And then on the southern side, we have quite a bit of green space, which is also being used as water retention. So that's actually required. About 90% of that is required for civil engineering purposes. So we really, based off of the development, we couldn't really add too much more without compromising our civil engineering aspects and also the amenities that we're trying to provide to this community in order to have a nice live-work area.
Also, I just have another comment. Hold on just a moment. In the narrative, it was stated that numerous employment offices and entities will be within walking distance and will help offset the parking need. And that's a true statement depending on what kind of numerous employment opportunities are we going to have there. I'm just wondering what kind of an effect that's going to have on parking, probably minimal at best. And also one of the offsets, it was suggested by public transportation stops. Well, right now our public transportation, I don't know if it really is going to have that profound an effect on the parking need. Is gated community, is this a gated community? It is, okay.
It is, Commissioner, yes.
Okay.
Just to address your commercial concerns, if you will look on the screen, the northern side of the private drive aisle that will become that Main Street concept will be developed separately as a commercial component, which will go through its own review for its own parking standards. So that commercial component to the north may include additional parking as its own development.
And then, Madam Chair, Commissioner Yocum, just to add to that as well, in terms of employment opportunities and providing that realm of walk to work concept where, people won't have to need to drive to work. An employment center is being built just south of that. Our Strategic Business Park is immediately to the south of it. So expect this will complement the area of the walkability from people living to an employment base nearby.
Thank you.
And just for clarifications real fast, this complex that we're talking about does not have commercial on the bottom. This is all residential. I think there's a little bit of misconception. This is all just apartments. This is not commercial with the stores at the bottom.
Numerous employment offices and entities within walking space will help offset the
Right, but that's on the topper portion. That's not this portion that we're looking at. If you want to bring that one back, Peter.
Well, there are several
Right there.
portions involved in this.
Right, but what we're talking about is just this bottom section right here.
Yeah, so along the northernmost part of this development, the first floor will have some space where people could rent out an office or some sort of small commercial type space for their own use. That's right. Okay.
Commissioner Sharp.
Thank you, Chair.
Oh, hang on. I'm sorry, Madam Chair. I just want to add in there to Commissioner Yocum's point about employment. I do also want to remind the Commission just to take into consideration that that is in the future. That is not guaranteed either, because many times we've also rezoned commercial to residential, and developers change their plans. Things change in the future as well. So just keep that in mind.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Sharp.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As I'm looking at the various site plans and not to beat a dead horse on this parking thing, but is all the parking covered or uncovered?
So there should be one covered spot for every unit. So most of it will be covered, some of it will be uncovered.
So as I'm viewing this, this is shown as covered parking. That's the right understanding. Okay. What is the minimum allowed stalls per unit for a development of this size? I'm sure you guys have kind of done the calculation. How far are they 1.5 versus what is the minimum standard allowable?
In this PAD zoning, it is 1.5 stalls per unit.
Okay, so they're right at the absolute minimum.
Yes.
So any reduction in the number of stalls, and then they would have to seek some kind of amendment or something to that effect.
But there has been no reduction.
Okay. If you can go back to the other site plan, I had a question, this one, in regards to the main thoroughfare, basically the entry into the property, as to why, or if it was considered to have angled parking to make for vehicular traffic to come through the property a little bit easier, make visibility better, reduce the number of accidents and incidents, just for that particular section. I'm fine with straight parking everywhere else, but just going through that main section, did you guys consider any angled parking at all? I know it cuts the number of stalls, but it's just safer.
Yeah, internally during our own planning meetings, we did not consider that since, like you mentioned, it would cut the number of stalls, which we already knew was going to be a concern for the commission overall. But Elena, I don't know if there's anything you might want to add, any conversations your team might have had regarding that style of parking?
Yeah, so our civil engineers didn't recommend that either. Not that they didn't not recommend it, they just didn't mention it, and so we just actually thought of that concept. We were trying to do our absolute best to squeeze in 522 parking spaces on the site, so was in an effort to get to that number.
Yeah, and I think that overall that's a little problematic, right? And this goes to the broader kind of concern that I have. I like the concept. I like the fact that, you know, we're trying to do some multifamily housing in a non-traditional way. The challenge is that, you know, by your kind of business plan, Z Modular is the name of your company, right? So you're trying to fit a square peg in kind of a round or oblong hole, right? What works in Phoenix may not work in Maricopa, may not work in San Antonio, Texas, right? I have concerns with the overall look and feel of this project as well. And I think there are ways where we can make it better, but I just really feel like we're really trying to shoehorn something in here that with a little bit more thoughtfulness and design, it could be better and could still work, but maybe you lose a building and shrink the size of the project in order to make it more visually appealing. So, for example, if you could go to one of the elevations. As I'm looking at this, this has the look and feel of an industrial complex. This does not look warm and inviting. It doesn't look like what we think of as Maricopa. I love the fact that it's new and that it's different, but there are little things that can be done to make this feel more warm and more welcoming. For example, awnings on the side windows, just something to break up the straight box look and feel of this project. But again, that takes creativity. It takes money, right? And it just takes a hair more, right? There are no pop-outs, right, to kind of break up just some of the square nature of this development. And then up top on the above the third floor, is that screening for, open space where someone's going to go on the roof, or is that just screening for mechanicals and HVAC and things like that? What is that?
I believe that is screening for mechanical equipment. There should not be any sort of roof access to the public.
Yeah, I mean, this is someone's hard work, and I don't want to be that guy that just rushes it, but this needs work.
And Vice Chair Sharp, Commissioners,
and this is a design review, so like this is where we get in our comments about the design. I don't like the design for the city of Maricopa.
Exactly. So that is something that you do have a say over, and you can make those comments to the applicant, and that's why we have the applicant on the phone, so they can directly hear you and hear your concerns and address them if necessary.
That's all. I swear, that's all.
Yeah. Back to traffic. I guess you mentioned that you were in discussions with ADOT about that, which leads me to believe, and I've driven that area in the last week to show people around, once you turn off of 347 going west on Edison Road where it loops, there is an amazing amount of traffic in that flow. You could be run over 10 times going into Culver's. My point is, I don't think you can look at it in isolation. You have to look at that whole area where it loops around. We're going to talk about another area. And I guess I would like to see, more of a comprehensive look about the whole area to be proactive, okay? And again, it is what it is. You clearly meet the guidelines, I understand, but quite often we hear, well, it's a traffic study and blah, 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 and that might be, but that area west is growing like wildfire. And I just think it's a good time at least to address to our citizens that this is under deep study. We clearly understand the issue. That's all I'm saying. I think, again, that it just shows that we're being proactive because, I live and walk in that area, and literally I would not tell anybody to cross anywhere over there. It's dangerous. And last week, 347 and 238, the backup was a mile. So I'm just saying, look at that. I have the reverse view, and I'll express it about our issue on parking. I think it's a solution looking for a problem. I applaud the fact that there was a decision made to give up some of that cement. I love the fact of the amenities, dog parks, anybody who goes around now. I think it's a real neat thing to have because everybody can't go to Copper Sky. And it looked like to me there was a conscious effort to take, which is legitimate concerns on parking, I agree with them, but to take that and say, we'll bite those concerns, but we're going to have nice amenities for these people who live here and for the area. I think it also enhances the area as far as property value. So I just want to take the reverse and say, I'm glad you made that decision. I'm glad you put cement, gave up cement for amenities, for grass and things like that. I think that will add to it. So just a voice on the other side to say, I'm pleased that I knew it would be a hard decision because these are good people who have good concerns, but there's another side to it.
Thank you, Commissioner. Yeah, I think it's really important to think about the other side of the coin when we're talking about parking. The alternative to a sea of concrete are nicer amenities that are going to bring up those property values, that are going to keep residents happy. So if we have to give up a couple parking stalls for that, in my opinion, it's worth it. So thank you, Commissioner.
Frank.
Yeah, so the traffic is definitely one of our hot buttons here. Just to, I guess, question on phasing, the part to the north, when do you anticipate that going in?
This might be something that's better for Elena, but as of right now, the city has not received a formal submittal for the northern phase of this development. But Elena, maybe you can chime in and give us a rough timeline?
For the retail area on the north, that's actually being handled by Matrix Equities as a part of the overall West Maricopa Village development, which includes lots 1 through 5. So that is the northern part of this site is actually not under our control, but Ron and his team at Matrix Equities would be able to answer that question.
Okay.
Okay, and I guess my point of asking the question is, with that, when you go to develop that, that's when any improvements along 238 will be triggered.
That, along with any other surrounding developments, right now we're also looking at Estrella Gin Business Park, just to the south of this development. That'll also help trigger those signalized improvements.
So until that time, then we have to live with the level of service D for this area.
Until those improvements are triggered.
Madam Chair, Commissioner, can I just clarify that one more time? Peter, can you go back to the subject site location? So there you go. So keep in mind, again, the yellow is the subject site area. All that blue area is the West Maricopa Village, PAD itself. There's, as you notice in the site plan, there's a roadway being designed, a public roadway being designed to connect these areas. So there's a plat also being submitted concurrently with this on a separate application process. And the plat is actually showing improvements along the State Route 238 frontage and again, Loma Road frontage. So yes, in theory, that retail portion is at a later phase. However, as part of the road improvements for the overall West Maricopa Village site itself and part of this project, there is going to be immediate road improvements being done to the frontage of State Route 238 to complement or to alleviate the required improvements needed to address the initial needs of traffic movement within this area. In addition, we are working with the developer to also improve, being that we're improving State Route 238 in frontage, to also work with some improvements along the Acacia Crossings portion to, I believe, the second entrance to the east there. So we'll have full half-street improvements on the entire frontage all the way to the next portion of it that's been built upon, which is around that, I believe it's called Ancon, I believe. So keep in mind, those improvements are being done immediately as part of this initial first phase project through a plat itself.
Okay, good, Rudy, thank you. I appreciate the clarification on that. The one other thing to add, I guess, is, and I mentioned it when we saw this at the zoning level, was please be sure to coordinate completely with ADOT on their plans for their Hacienda Freeway study and make sure we leave enough room in there if that's for any improvements that they want to do for that.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner. Yeah.
I think the last 2 weeks, accidents will help push that through as well. Yeah, that wasn't pretty good. I'm going to have to just really drill down the same comments. If, to Commissioner Irving's point, if you look at this right here, and I'm glad you left this up, Loma Road off of 238 turns into Edison. Mm-hmm. And we already know the development that's going in on Edison is going to make that whole intersection of Edison and 347 a nightmare. I'm not even sure what we have out there now will actually accommodate it, to be honest with you. Right, that's what I'm talking about. That whole thing is exploding right now with Sprouts and all that other stuff. So,
Madam Chair, Commissioner, before I didn't mean to interject, just keep in mind, what you see on Edison Road is the maximum capacity roadway that we have designed for this type of large trip generation. So the right-of-way width you see on this exhibit is kind of like this 2-lane roadway, the same roadway you see on Honeycutt Road itself. As we speak, there is road improvements being done in front of Sonoran Creek to also expand that roadway to, again, accommodate the road traffic that we expect as part of it. And again, as development continues to occur on Edison Road, it'll be their responsibility to make those improvements to Edison Road to, again, to anticipate the high-capacity roadway trips that we expect to generate along Edison Road that connects back to State Road 238. So a lot of the improvements are being done, or it's in construction right now with the Sonoran Creek development, and then just keep in mind that this is designed as a high-capacity roadway, and this development is being taken care of their Loma Road improvements.
You're taking the words right out of my mouth, actually.
Okay,
that's where I was going, because
about that.
what I was saying is this development that we've got going on down here at Edison is already making this intersection of Edison and 347 jam-packed. What it's going to do, it's going to force traffic back. As soon as people figure out that Loma Road's going to go back up to Smith Inc. or 238, they're going to start using that. The good thing about that in playing off of what Commissioner Irving was saying, is the flip side of all that is, and what Rudy had just actually said was, every one of these developments that happen along this road is going to prompt this development to expand the roading, which will ultimately help increase what we have now and the ability to make it better. In the meantime, we will have to, for lack of a better words, just kind of, slowly pull the Band-Aid. I was going to say that, but I'll let you say that. But yes, grin and bear it. So pull the Band-Aid off a little at a time, and it's going to hurt for a little while, but when it gets all the way off, I think this is going to be phenomenal.
And I guess that was exactly my point. Let everybody in the city know exactly what you two said.
Right.
That we're just not sitting here thinking about it, that what you said, to me, totally satisfies me, is we need to let people know exactly that point, that we're thinking about it, we know about it, we know, because, anybody who walks that, and please don't try to ride your bike across it right now, but to know exactly what you got, I just think that would help the citizens know, while they're just not flipping something else up, because we hear that all the time. One more thing going on, and that there's some actual planning going on. So I really appreciate those comments.
And the fact that the city is already doing the 238 Smith Inc. 347 interchange within the next, that's why I was bringing that up again, because I wanted to find out what the time frame was, so that by the time this gets done, this one small section of this, that intersection should be close to being compared, do whatever it is that you're going to do improving. And so that's kind of where I wanted to kind of jump on Commissioner Irving's bandwagon on that. I do have a little bit of a concern, like Commissioner Sharp did, with the boxiness. I know that that's the modern, that's the coolness. Unfortunately, a lot of places are starting to get away from the earth tone and going more of the cools and the grays and the blues. And I just painted a community of 21 buildings, and I did not want it to go blue and gray, but it's blue and gray, but it looks really good. So it's just a fact of change. Mm-hmm. And change isn't always necessarily good at this point, but when you go down to this point, it looks good. But I'm still having an issue with the boxiness. That part I'm still struggling with. I don't think it's enough for me to say no to it, but I think it's enough for me to say that maybe we can ask the applicant to look at maybe one of the designs that Commissioner Sharp had said and say, instead of, if you can go back to the elevation.
Sure.
See some of the awnings. Okay, this one's fine. So you see how the awnings are sticking straight out? Instead of doing a concrete extension of just concrete, why not make it a little bit more of an angled canopy look instead? That will help break that boxiness up, not look so industrial. I mean, it is in a good location because this is right down the street on, the Estella Gen Park is industrial. So, I mean, it's a good step up to that, so I get that, but I'm still struggling in his same camp with that,
Sure.
with the boxiness of it.
And Madam Chair, Commissioners, I do appreciate the conversation we're having now, because this is something we can take to future applicants and maybe even to this very applicant and say, hey, look, this is what the Planning Commission wants, and this is what is going to get approved, and this is what we don't want to see, or this is what we do want to see.
Another option to look at is maybe because again, to Commissioner Sharp's point, the dollars, kind of play in this. So maybe not be so concerned about the part of the box that faces interior, but the boxes that face the exterior, then it wouldn't look so boxy out on the general public street. And it would deter the look of it. And I think it would be a little bit helpful if that was there. But it's what we've all been looking to do, and that's the village concept. When this is all done, this is exactly where we want to be and where we want to go, which is the village concept. So I applaud all this, and I hope the applicant's kind of taking some of our notes and thinking that maybe we can do something like that. The other thing one of the things that I've heard everybody talk about, the Acacia Crossing development and all of the, you can go back to that one site plan, there you go, on how that's all going to deter the site plan. It's not really, and I appreciate that, but I think one of the things that a lot of people are forgetting about is this is actually going to benefit Acacia Crossings more than people realize, because this is going to be a buffer with the cows and all the flies and the smell of the cows. Yeah, see, they're over there. So this will help. So, I mean, you're not going to lose the mountains and everything else like that, but it will actually help in that respect.
You just made me think of something, Madam Chair, and I have this philosophy at work where I try not to complain without offering a solution. And this is certainly not a complaint. It's just, as I look at this development, I want to be very clear that I like what they're trying to do. I like this approach. And I guess my comments were a little bit more aimed towards just refining the design a little bit more with some input from us, right? That this is where that process starts. So this is not to say that I don't support the project. It is just simply to say that I think that there are some things that can be done to the existing box as it sits, the four walls, just to break it up a little bit. Again, the cheapest, easiest thing is just to put awnings on it. It provides both shade to the windows and it gives it an aesthetic look and feel. So those are just a couple of simple, minor changes that can be made. And again, with parking, to Commissioner Irving's point, he made an excellent point about I'd rather there be more amenities than a sea of parking. So me as one person on the commission, I'd be willing to see that number of ratio for parking go down if it means more amenities. I'm perfectly willing to make that trade-off. What I wouldn't want to see is that there's no amenities and there's a lack of parking, right? Like, I think that's where I would be prepared to support the applicant if, again, you make it a little bit more friendly, it's safer, right? You start doing some angled parking where it makes sense along thoroughfare type of roads. And yes, you lose a few parking spaces, but again, we have mechanisms in place through the city where we can make exceptions to the parking rule if it makes sense. Mm-hmm. So again, just throwing a couple of points out there to clarify.
Also, in their own narrative, they do state less parking would allow more green space. And I think that's the spirit we're discussing right now.
Exactly.
Well, yeah, if you can go back to the amendment, there was one other one. Yeah, I mean, we've got hammocks. We have all of those
fire
green space,
pits.
and then there was another one with a dog park in there. So I mean, they're doing that. There's a large dog park and a small dog park. So they're taking away the parking C and making the amenities. They've got a pool. I like the fact of the gated community, but being in my line of work, I don't want to ever live in a gated community. But that's beside the point. So I think to Jim's point, they did do that. So I mean, I'm not against it. I just think that we've got to try to do something with the boxiness.
That's our job.
I know.
That's what we're supposed to do.
I know, right?
So just a clarification to the chair, if we have design elements that we would like to see revised and brought back, does that mean we would have to deny this particular case and see it at a future date? Or do we make the amendments here, but the applicant would have to be willing? Like, what's that
All right,
process?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Sharp, there's two options are available. You can provide conditions that they continue to work with staff before the building submittal to, based off tonight's comments, to address the concerns or the architectural look of the boxiness, based off suggestions made tonight, and the staff can assure that those comments are addressed, and then offline we can kind of vet those 2-on-1s with the commissioners, or two. You table this request to come back to you to look at what their elevations are. I'll leave it up to the applicant. Elena, is there any timeline concerns on your end with those options? If they were to be tabled, will we lose timeline on your guys' end to get this constructed?
I guess I don't quite understand what you mean by tabled.
In terms of timeline, I mean, if we table it, will it obviously would it delay the timeline schedule of the project itself.
Before you answer that, I think there's another option. And guys, it's a slippery slope when we turn in design engineers. I think you guys have done an excellent job of presenting to the city and to the applicant what you'd like to see. I applaud all of them. When we get into setting those as conditions, that's a trail we need to watch out for, because that can go crazy. Every time we come up, we just delay until they met our conditions. I would hope as a group, and like I said, your points are excellent, that we would submit those as strong recommendations for the betterment of the city, which is our job to do. And I hope between the partnership between the city and the applicant, that would take care of it. But boy, to have us come back and be another go-around, well, no, I don't think the awnings are the right. I'm just worried that's a slippery slope I don't think we want to go down, Madam Chair.
My only concern is that this is the design review. So we're actually supposed to be putting our eyes to it and making those judgmental calls. If we don't, if we as a body don't like it, I'd hate for it to delay the applicant, but putting conditions on it.
That does create a slippery slope.
What'd you say?
I'm just going to kind of echo what Commissioner Irving is saying, is when we start putting conditions on it, then we end up going, I mean, all you're doing is debating between us and them. I think that what we really need to do is really kind of table it for another, until the next meeting and have them go back and see what they come up with. Because
that's precisely,
design.
This is not my project, right? It's the applicant's project for the city, and they should have ultimate veto power, if you will, over the design that they think would, impress this body. I don't want to put conditions to say it should be this or it should be that. I think we need to send it back to the applicant to come up with some more creative ideas and then represent.
Let them go to their design team and say, because we're not designers, we just know what we want for the city. And I think that's probably going to be what I'm hearing. And I'll put it out there for a motion here in a minute, but I'm thinking that might...
At all. I would move approval as submitted with strong recommendations as made by the group.
Before we get there, Nick, you're kind of looking like you want to speak. No? Okay.
No, you have a motion on the table, so if there's a second.
Okay, no, I thought you wanted to speak. Was that Commissioner Bartlett? We got a motion. Is there a second?
I had a discussion item prior to, I thought you had said wait for the motion, so.
Well, he's made a motion. He's made a motion.
I just simply made a motion. My fear is this could turn into a lifelong project back and forth. I just made a motion to approve with strong recommendations to the city and to the applicant of all the things you guys just said.
Right, and I need to honor his motion by asking, is there a second for his motion to accept as stated with recommendations, strong recommendations from the commission to look at changes? Is there a second on that?
Commissioner Babb, correct me if I'm wrong, but I did hear a second from you initially. Is that
No,
right? No,
I was going to motion to table
okay.
before Commissioner Irvine.
So just to be clear, as of right now, there is no second.
There's no second for that motion. So, and I appreciate where you're coming from on that, to be honest with you, because I think that what you're trying to do is speed the project along.
Point of a clarification. I know a motion table is not debatable, but the clarification I would ask the chair is, if we're putting it on the table, that means it needs to be brought off the table. What are we asking them to do to take it off the table? You just can't table something. If it goes on, it has to come off. Then before anybody, in other words, our next meeting, somebody's got to move to take it off the table. What conditions need to be met to take it off the table? Because other than that, you can't take it off the table.
Commissioner, yes, thank you. I appreciate that. If we are going to move this item onto the next meeting, I think we should be clear on what the applicant needs to do in order to attain approval from the commission.
Well, based upon the criteria for approval that you have up here, this last bullet point, visually interesting built environment, I don't think it's visually interesting.
Okay,
So come
So
back with
any-
something visually interesting.
that's great, yeah.
That means that visual interesting built environment has to meet the benchmark of all 7 of us, or just you? Well, then what does it mean?
Well, that's what the table would be, is if somebody makes a motion to table it because they want to have the boxiness reviewed and to soften up that boxiness.
And I'm asking the interpretation of what you just said. In other words, they could come back and do one little twist and say, well, we've met that.
And if
I'm
that
just
doesn't
trying to get you
suffice the
guys not to go down,
commission's
I'm just trying to
request,
get
then
you
it
guys
wouldn't
not to
get
fall down a rabbit hole.
Well, Commissioner
Which is
Irving,
about what you're ready to do. That's
Commissioner Irving, is it not kind of similar to what you were just saying, is that strong recommendations? I mean, we've recommended a lot here this evening, but
Well,
if they don't take it to heart,
I think
it's the same thing.
The difference from what I was saying is their strong recommendations to heart. What you are saying, if you table it, that simply means you will not have a vote on it until it comes off the table. There's a huge difference. My way is just simply their recommendations. I hope you take it to heart. You discuss it, which is what everybody said. If you table it, that means there can be no vote till it takes off the table. The applicant should request a specific guideline of what they're supposed to do to meet visual interested building environments. That's only fair to take it off the table. I'm asking, what is that, so they know, that's all. Because if you want to go down that hole, that's only fair to them.
But I think that the discussion that we've had about this project has laid a lot of various options from various folks on the table.
Then spell them out, that's all I'm
And
asking.
I don't think it needs to be spelled out. I think it's for the applicant to decide which one of these or several of these that they want to implement, and then they represent. It's just, we're going to come back and say, here are the changes that we've made. Here are the things that we've walked by our engineers and said that work. Here's our cost analysis to incorporate some of these changes, because there are trade-offs that we cannot make as a body. We don't know the cost of adding some of these visual elements, but they may do the cost analysis and say, hey, it's worth the trade-off if it gets the approval. So I don't think it's fair for us to set absolutely clear, you need this and this many. It's for the applicant to decide, because ultimately it's their project. Now, they have 7 people of this board that they have to try to make a project visually interesting. That's their job to do. It's not ours. And as a body, we will see this project come back again, and we will decide at that point, we like this or not. No different than what we're doing now. Some people like it, some people don't. And if the votes aren't there to get it passed, then we deny it. I don't want to deny it. I want to table it, have them look at it again, and come back.
But in effect, you de facto will be, never mind.
I think just
Chair.
for clarification.
Design is subjective by nature.
Right, hang on.
You know,
Hang on, I think I can clarify everything. I think of what everybody is really trying to say. Nobody wants to deny this project. I think that we're all in agreement that this is a great project. We want to see this project go forward. We've vetted out and talked about the parking. I think we've all come to some sort of conclusion that, a couple of the trade-offs are great with the parking. That's not an issue. We've talked ad nauseum about the traffic flow. I think we're all okay with that at this point. At really what seems to be the sticking point here is the boxiness, the industrial look. And all we're asking them to do, I think, if I'm hearing everybody correctly that have spoke about this, including myself, is to go back to the design committee people, whoever that person is on their side, not our side, on their side, and say, what can we do to help it not look so boxy? That's not going to be financially outdoing us. So to his point, maybe the suggestion that he had made that I kind of agree with is maybe some sort of awnings would work, but that's up to them to decide, not us.
So if they come back.
Then that's when we either do a yes or no, and we will call a roll call vote to see how it gets passed. But I think that we owe it to all the commissioners, as well as all of our constituents, that we at least try that, because this is the design review. That's what we're here for.
Well, I still would have
Go ahead.
comments here, and some are in response to Commissioner Irving. First,
Commissioner, can you just turn on your speaker? It's just, it should be a green button.
Move closer to the mic. I think it might already be on, but
Is that better?
slightly.
No?
Oh, yeah.
What about there? Okay,
Perfect.
I'll just speak louder.
There you go.
Maybe it's the mask. Okay, so I want to clarify first that I am not deterring from the proposed amenities. And I want to clarify that the proposed amenities include the current parking spaces that are 1.5 spots per unit, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so I did not address, and maybe that was, I don't know if that someone took offense to it. I didn't address that I appreciate the proposed amenities, because I do. But there still are some concerns about the parking, and mentioned the curvature of the parking space, or the parking lot, which would increase safety. So I think that is something that can be addressed and brought back, and then Elena? Is it
The
Elena?
applicant, yes.
Mentioned that there are certain things that are not shown in the renderings that exist. So by presenting something that's not architecturally complete for us to view, it creates more of a challenge for us to truly appreciate what it could look like. So, Commissioner, in response to Commissioner Irving, I think that it's not something that is a difficult task. If it maybe were a more complete rendering, we might not feel that it's as modular and boxy, because they have these other developments and maybe showing a sample of what those look like and what it would look like in comparison to what's being presented for us to approve. That could be very helpful to us, so that when we do look at it, we can. And then in addition, I'd like to know, are we able to have that current traffic condition, the impact condition? Because I didn't know how to ask this, if he could have grabbed it while we were having all of these discussions, because if the condition is going to change to a D and we're currently at a C minus, it's not that big of an impact. But with the constant increase of the population here in Maricopa, there's always going to be an impact of increased traffic. That's just a part of growth. And I think that for some of us, we are struggling with that change because we're used to the small town community in our city of Maricopa, and now that we're growing, we're feeling the growing pains. So it's not that, it's like Madam Chair said, you're not wanting to deny or disapprove what's being presented, just wanting to see it in a more complete representation. Because if you
Better
present just the
represented, yes.
boxy, and you know that there's more to it, like for me with the patio for the first level, well, had that been shown in the renderings, I wouldn't have had to wonder what that would look like. If there are already going to be awnings that help, then it would be helpful to see it. So that's all I wanted to add. Thank you.
Commissioner, thank you. Yeah, and to address your point, Commissioner LaFalle and Commissioner Irving, it could be as simple as the applicant needs to provide better renderings, or it could be that, yes, they do need to enhance their product. And it's important for us to set that note of Maricopa doesn't take a B-grade product. We do want to see nice development out here, whether it's single-family residential or 3-story high-rise. And I think it's important for the commission to be clear about those goals for the city to the applicant.
And I have no problem with any of that. As long as what you just said is very clear to them, I have no problem with any of that. But I was just concerned about, we don't want it boxy. You know, everybody's boxes.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Babb.
I just want to add that I am fully supportive of this project. It is what Maricopa needs. It's definitely something that Maricopa has asked for a very long time. So I, as well as everyone else here, I'm not saying no to this project. It's to me, again, that industrial design that I saw. And again, to the point that was just made, it may be just the renderings that we saw. It may be without the landscape. It may be without the context around it, but just the images that I saw were extremely industrial. And I know we've had other developers come in and provide video renderings of the entire project and snippets of the project so we could get the full scale before. So maybe that's an option as well, to see it in 3D instead of 2D paper, to get more dimensions and to see it not be in this 2D boxy shape. That may help as well as an idea. But as it stands, I don't feel that this reflects Maricopa well. And I would like to see the city work back with the applicant and us return it to the next meeting. And whenever the discussion's done, just let me know and I'd be ready to make that motion.
I'd like to make a motion to table this agenda item and to give the applicant an opportunity to work with the city and incorporate or contemplate, or however you want to say it, some of the changes that we've talked about during this meeting. I think between yourself and Rudy, the city has a pretty good idea of what the city is looking for to make this project more visually interesting. And so, I mean, again, this is not a denial, just a motion to table it to the next meeting.
I'll second that motion.
All right, I've got a motion and a second for table it for the applicant to come back with a little bit more detailed information, a little bit more of, based on our recommendations. Any other comments?
It's not debatable.
Roll call?
Yes.
You don't need one unless there's a nay. If there's a nay, then you'll need to do a roll call.
All right, let's try it that way. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Okay, well, that wasn't a nay, that was just an abstain, so we're still, it still goes. That's fine, I'm just trying to keep legal, that's why he's over there.
That's why
Right. All right, so I hope that the applicant understands we're not denying it, we just probably, to Ms. Rachel's point, we probably might need to see a little bit better renderings of what's going on and maybe take a little bit of what Commissioner Sharp was having to say and everybody else to heart, and strong recommendations. Oh, thank you, I appreciate that. All right.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Commissioners, and thank you, Elena, the applicant, as well, for
Thank you.
entering.
We are looking forward to singing it again. All right, 5.5, Development Review Permit, DRP 21-03, a request by OA plus D, request and review and approval of site map, landscape, photometric, and elevation plans for proposed single-story, 5,826 square foot, 3-tenant office development generally located at the northwest corner of Edison Road and Estrella Gin Parkway. Discussion and action. Gotta cut this stuff down.
Sorry for the mouthful, Madam Chair. Thank you, though. So just a little information on the site, about 3/4 of an acre large. This will be the first pad building of the Estrella Gin Business Park. This will house 3 tenants. Tentatively, it'll be MITA, the Chamber of Commerce, and a business incubator that the city is working on. Currently, the site does sit vacant, and it is zoned for light industrial. Here's the site location. If it looks familiar, it's just south of our previously discussed Fuse project, right on the intersection of Edison and Estrella Gin Parkway. This is the site plan, and off to the left of the picture, you can see where it sits in the overall development of the Estrella Gin Parkway, or the Estrella Gin Business Park, sorry. Here you can see the parking layout and overall parking circulation of the site. This is the landscape plan for the site. Fully meets all our landscape requirements in the base zoning code for this designation of zoning. And here we can see some elevations and materials for the building. As you can see, It complements and mixes in with the existing sort of public uses around the city that we've already seen, like Copper Sky and here at City Hall. Once again, the criteria for approval for this commission is the overall design of the project. Is it suitable environment for occupants, visitors, and the general community? Are the colors, materials, and landscaping internally consistent? Is this compatible with neighboring developments, and is it visually interesting? Public comments, or as part of our public outreach, we did post a sign on the site, and notification letters did go out to all the property owners within 600 feet of the site. As of now, no public comments were received for this project. Staff finds the submittal items for DRP 2103 to be substantially compliant with the zoning code, and staff recommends approval of DRP 2103, subject to the conditions set in the staff report.
Okay, we're going to start like we did last time. Commissioner Babb.
I have no questions.
Start on this side this time. Commissioner Frank.
I have no questions. I'm happy to see tenants and improvements starting to finally go in the Australia Gym, though.
As we are. Yeah, all over.
Commissioner Irving.
No question.
Commissioner Sharp.
No questions.
Commissioner Yocum.
Just a comment. I am absolutely delighted to see that you're considering a future business incubator space. Kudos to you guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Rachel.
Just one question, and this is clarification. Because of the 2040 planning, this is just a portion of this development where there is still possible consideration for the larger, like, industrial, commercial, where the customer service facilities, the expansion, correct?
Absolutely. This is just the first building of the entire Estrella Gen Parkway. So there is definitely a lot more to come.
Okay.
And a lot more for you guys to review
Thank
as
you.
this gets built out.
Thank you so much.
Of course.
I'm just going to throw my 2 cents out there. If you can go back to the there you go. Look what it looks like. Boxiness. I just had to throw that out there. But that's okay in this one, only because of the fact that this is industrial. But the good thing about it, and this is kind of where you guys can work with the other applicant, this Estrella Gen Parkway whole area will actually play off of that if we can just make that side a little bit less, because it will help meld it all together. It's kind of really what I was going to, but I couldn't bring this up before that.
But do you see how they use the awnings on places where they didn't necessarily have to, but it breaks up the monotony of the building, the good use of various types of materials? They got 4 or 5 different materials in use.
And they did on the other one.
Yeah.
It just didn't look as right because it's an apartment complex. So.
I'd like to make a motion to approve as recommended by staff, DRP 2103.
I'll second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Any other comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? So moved. Thank you, guys. All right, I think that hit our heaviness. And look, we effectively emptied the room. I know, we emptied the room. What can I say?
Good job, guys. Good job.
All right. But you know what? I will have to say, since there's nobody here anymore, I will have to say, I mean, this is why we meld well together, because everybody comes with a different perspective. And by the time we get through all 7 of us, if an applicant doesn't have a good idea where we want them to be.
And we all like each other after.
And I still love Jim.
And that's it, right.
That's the main thing.
Right? But if they don't know what we're talking about by the time we're done, they weren't listening at all. Right. All right. So with that being said, we do need to go backwards up again to 5.1, election of commission chair. The commission shall discuss and possibly take action on appointing a chair, discussion, and action.
I'd like to make a motion to renominate Linda Huggins as chair.
I'll second.
Okay, there is a motion and a second. Any other comment? Do I have to accept it?
No, you're just doing a great job. I mean,
Do you want to accept it? That's the question.
Do you want the role?
Yes, I do, but I wanted to make sure that the attorney was going to agree with me, because I don't want to make the attorney mad. There's one thing I've learned in life is don't piss off the
You're
attorney.
always picking on poor Nick.
Madam Chair,
Please
Commission,
take
there's
a-
been
come on,
a,
Linda.
there's been a motion and a second. You have to vote on the motion.
I just wanted to make sure. All right.
Well, I'll just say to the point that you were making before, we've got a good group here. We've been gelling really well. Each of us has kind of our bailiwick, if you will, or a certain area that we focus on, and I think that's aided in this body doing a phenomenal job, and I'm super eager to get Rachel. You just first day dove in. That's exciting. Like, that's really good, so.
I am impressed with you. I really am.
I'm not new to this.
It's not my first rodeo.
You say it's not my first rodeo, but it's like, yeah.
I think we have to vote.
Yes,
Do
all
have to
those in
vote.
favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Second.
All right, there is a motion and a second.
And I accept.
Good, I'm glad to hear that. All right, there's a motion and a second for Commissioner Sharp to be vice chair. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Awesome. All right, I think that's it.
I'd like to make a motion
We
we
got to go
adjourn.
back down to the bottom again. 6.0, report from commission and our staff. Sorry, Rudy, we've been
Oh, you're okay.
jumping things around.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, April 12th is our next scheduled meeting. We have a couple of projects along with the table item. We'll see if the applicant responds in a timely manner to give you updated elevations on the Fuse 520. Also, within the next couple of weeks, we'll do, again, project briefings. Thank you to all the commissioners who have responded to staff in terms of project briefings. We feel that that's very, very helpful for staff to give you information on these projects before it comes back to you for action night. So please do take advantage of the time to look at the documents, take advantage to ask those questions, and any comments or feedback we give to the applicant before the action night is definitely beneficial for everyone. I want to give you an update that we are kicking off a land use study for 7 ranches. 7 ranches has always been on our radar for years and years and years. We've done preliminary road networks ideas about 3 years ago for the last area transportation plan study, but now is vital for us to get that land use plan study that was done by Community Planning Assistance Team, American Planning Association, about 11 years ago on that, and we want to kick it off with a formalized land use plan, similar to what we've done with the Heritage District. We'll actually have marching orders, recommendations, and what needs to be the objective of what 7 ranches should be in the future.
Madam Chair, Rudy, just got a quick question. Are you going to dust off that 11-year-old plan? I remember being at those meetings for 7 ranches. It's when I first got introduced to the city of Maricopa. So are we going to use that as a baseline, or are we going to start fresh, or are we going to engage that same group again?
We're starting fresh. We're engaging the residents in the area, engaging the residents of the adjacent areas, similar to what we did 11 years ago, but more of a larger magnitude in terms of better marching orders for what the city needs to plan out in terms of infrastructure, land use ideas, what land use plan are we looking at, and then what implementation steps the city needs to do to formalize what 7 ranches is for the city of Maricopa.
That's exciting. Thanks.
I'm glad to see that you're starting fresh, because I was at that same meeting, and there was not very, let's say that the folks who lived there did not think very much of what was being presented. As a matter of fact, they were extremely highly resistive. I don't think it was ever going to go anywhere. I have a feeling you're going to run into that this time too. I really do, because I know people who live down there, and they're not going to change over their dead body.
I think we'll have a packed house on that one then.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would.
Yeah, it's an interesting area. I mean, there's a about 70% of the area are privately owned LLCs. There's not much population. There's a small population there, but a lot of land has been transitioned or transactions have been made to hold on to the land, and they don't know exactly what they envision for the land. It's been marketed as mixed-use commercial by a lot of realtors out there. So
Wired, so.
yeah. And that's what's happening. We've been seeing more of the perimeter being developed than the interior portion of 7 ranches. But we have to start planning
Being
for
proactive.
a land use plan instead of hodgepodge incremental developments here and there. It's lack of infrastructure, roads, lack of sewer, lack of water, assurances for life safety. There's a magnitude of issues that needs to be resolved. Having this first step can give us further marching orders of what needs to be done, also identify funding sources to improve the area. So, Madam Chair, Commissioners, that's all I have for now. Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. Don't think there's a need for it. Doug, he's shaking his head no already. Okay. Well, that being said, at 7:41, I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved. Second.
All right, we got a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Hey.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Josh.
Thank you all. Welcome, Rachel.
Thank you.
See you later, Bab.
You doing okay?
Doing great.